Happy Pride! Yes, we know it's November.
Yes, it's not quite Pride season, but Pride is in our name. Welcome back to Fast Forward Pride podcast with Alessandro and Jason. Whilst it's not Pride season, it's there's been recent events in the Pride movement, quite dramatic, that have made us think that it was time to address, the point of what does Pride bring to the LGBT community, and are prides across the world doing what they're supposed to do and what our community needs today.
Yes.
But before we get into that, obviously we've got our flags here. And they look different.
I know.
So what flag have you got?
So this is the original design by American Gilbert Baker. And it's actually missing one of the original stripes.
That's right. They had more colors.
It had one more color, and that color was difficult
to print, apparently.
Yes. So this is the one that eventually became the general flag.
And for decades stayed the same.
Yes.
And then we had a bit of an acceleration in the change of the design, because obviously Daniel Quasar in the US first introduced the stripes.
The trans and the black and brown.
Yeah, exactly. The black and brown and the trans. In fact, there was a version in between just with the black and brown stripes originally to signal the anti-racism. And then we got into the triangle kind of design. And then more recently, Valentino Vecchietti added the intersex with the yellow and the circle to show intersex inclusion.
Yes.
Now, apart from the pretty designs of a flag, obviously that signals a bit of unrest in our community, I would say, but also a bit of an awakening in terms of realizing that for a long time, Pride really meant gay men,
white
gay men, lesbians if you're lucky, and so this is actually quite impactful and quite powerful as a symbol of a community that is evolving and is recognizing that
and becoming more inclusive,
that we need to be more inclusive. Now, we will talk about Pride as a movement, but you've got a really interesting story about the flag. Before we move on.
I was very honored to carry this flag in with 6 other activists from around the Commonwealth at the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games with Tom Daly. Tom was one of the... Tom was one of the torch bearers at the opening ceremony to light the torch for the Commonwealth Games in 2022, and his chosen charity and his chosen identity was given presence. This was the first time that a Pride flag had ever been shown at any major international sporting event, so it was quite historic.
That is quite historic, and I hope it's not going to be the last time.
No. Well, Olympics are still kind of saying no to it. We had pushback for the Commonwealth Youth Games, and I think it's again something that's progressing slowly.
I know, and I've got a real bee in my bonnet about Pride flags and Eurovision if you're listening, because there used to be Pride flags and all sorts of other flags, but then more recently they banned anything that is not your national flag. People find ways, with dresses and whatever to show their colors.
Yes,
but I find it quite upsetting actually that institutions like Eurovision, that are supposed to be about inclusion and giving people an opportunity to be themselves and celebrate our uniquenesses, they are preventing them from bringing the flag, for example. But again, for another episode. Now, we talked about the flag because we wanted to talk about Pride actually as a movement. We started from the news of Manchester Pride going bankrupt, and again, it's only the opinion of 2 people having a chat, but I think there's a real debate in the community right now about what Pride as a movement, as an organization as well, because let's remind the audience that many of these prides are run entirely by volunteers, but some, they've become professional organizations with paid members of staff, with CEOs and all of that. And whilst we're not going to debate the merits of volunteer run versus professional organizations, what we want to discuss today is what kind of pride do our communities, plural, need today.
Well, I think the first thing...
let's talk about the history of Pride.
First thing to highlight is the history. The history of Pride began in 1970. It was the first anniversary after the Stonewall riots. And it was a march and a protest. There was no parading, there were no costumes, there were no trucks playing Kylie Minogue. And I think that route has been absolutely lost. And, we have not gotten full equality anywhere in the globe. And for us to just turn it into this parade, which I've withdrawn from over the last 2 decades, I found really frustrating. Because the first Pride I ever attended here in London was when I first moved here in 1987. And again, it was not a parade, it was a protest. There were no trucks, there was no music. All we had were whistles, and we used to shout, what was it? 2, 4, 6, 8... something legislative. We had all these little chants that we had,
But it was political, right? It was about the legislation.
We marched past,
it was about equality.
We marched past 10 Downing Street. We marched past the Houses of Parliament. Now all of that is gone. I really lament the fact that Pride is no longer a protest. And I know Peter Tatchell has tried to do something different. But I think it needs to be more community generated and not be directed just by the Tatchells or whoever else. I think we do need to come together as a community and have a discussion about it.
Now, obviously, we're only 2 people, but, we represent parts of the community, and, we've been involved with Pride, especially, Pride in London in my case, for many, many years. So I think, we can at least share our thoughts on this. And I completely agree with you again. Coming from a different generation, but having come from a country where, these big prides don't exist, I really admire the fact that we could celebrate our identity. And I have to be honest, I moved here in 2012, and it happened to be World Pride that year, and there was the Olympics. And I thought, wow, like LGBTQ plus people taking over the city and being happy and being, celebrating their love. It was very powerful. But over the years, I just kind of realized that whilst that's great and it gives us a real opportunity to be who we are and celebrate who we are, if that's all it is, we are really running the danger of allowing the behind the scenes, the politicians and the people that want to take rights away to do their work because there's no pressure put on them because we've lost the political nature of the Pride movement. So I am into mind about it because I do think that there should be space for celebration, but also that it shouldn't be at the cost of protest. So how do you think, having had a few more years of experience and also maybe kind of thinking about, Caribbean countries, where, again, the context is very different. How do we reconcile those two desires, I guess, of, on one hand, celebrating our identity, but on the other hand, being vocal and visible in protesting so that we can protect and claim our rights?
Well, I think the first thing that needs to happen is diversity in the decision-making process. So if you have predominantly white, cisgender gays and lesbians making decisions, then yes, it's going to be predominantly Kylie and sexy go-go boys in gold shorts. We need to have black lesbians, we need to have black gay men, we need to have trans people at that table making the decisions about what things look like. So I have seen over the last couple of years, there's been, for example, the trans tent, the trans stage in Soho Square on Pride days. We had the people of colour tent and stage. But again, I think it's tokenism. And that tokenistic idea of Pride, again, is not dealing with the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the global north has dominated ideas and concepts around what our equality should look like. And it has been predominantly, nothing to see here, we're just like straight people. And that heteronormative ideology is now coming to bite us in the ass because they ignore trans people. I mean, the largest LGBT organization, Stonewall, did not include trans people until 15 years into their existence. Black people had no place at the table. Where is this happening? It's a bubble of whiteness.
Well, and in response to that, I think many communities found and carved their own spaces.
Like
you got
Black
Trans Pride, UK Black Pride, Bi Pride. So we've got all of those initiatives, but obviously they get maybe less visibility. UK Black Pride is growing in visibility, but if you think about Trans Pride, Bi Pride, Pride in London sucks up a lot of the attention
and the resources.
funding. Exactly.
Yes.
So, what are we saying here? If we wanted to be helpful and, kind of proactive in offering, some suggestions to those organizers, are we saying that segmentation isn't helpful and we should try to collaborate more? Or are we saying that actually big prides aren't helpful and actually we should accept that, because of how our community is, that there should be a lot more smaller prides happening rather than just one big one? Which one is it?
Well, I mean, when I first went to Pride, there was just one in London. Yeah. That was it. There's now, I think, 98 prides around the UK. And I think those smaller prides are really important because the big pride ghettoizes us. Yeah. We think it's visibility, but marching down Regent Street is not visibility, because what you find happening is what we call in the Caribbean pride and hide. So people will get on the tube in their general clothes and then get off in Oxford Circus or whatever central station and put on their pride. Yeah. And that pride and hide is damaging. What we need to see is pride everywhere in the city and not have no-go areas. I mean, London has no-go areas for LGBTQ plus people. I mean, we've had LGBTQ plus people attacked in central London, murdered on the South Bank. These are the issues that we need to face. And for me, Pride as a celebration needs to take a back seat when we see these pushbacks happening. Yeah. I think you cannot celebrate advancements when there are rollbacks happening at the same time. Then Pride needs to become much more politicized. Yeah. We need to make sure that our sponsors are responsible sponsors. You can't have BA Systems funding Stonewall and other LGBT organizations. These are bomb manufacturers who are bombing people in the global south. We can't have connections with such problematic organizations. And we must request that while we have to pay the bills for the Portaloos and all the other accoutrements, I mean, I think they pay over $2 million in just parking fines to shut down parking meters. We have to pay for those parking meters on the route. So while we have bills to pay, and while I'm very pleased that big business has come on board, we need to hold them accountable for it. Because for the £30,000 that they spend donating on Pride, they earn back tenfold from us. Yeah. So they're making money off of us. And we need to see that returned into the community. Where's the funding for LGBTQ plus centers? Where's the funding for LGBTQ plus advocacy? Where is this work? You can't just join us for June and then ignore us for the rest of the year. And that's where Pride has become a ghetto, both in terms of how it is in the street, but in a very esoteric sense of we have now ghettoized ourselves into June.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and especially on the sponsorship point, I think we really need to make sure that there is genuine, authentic alignment, and that shows real desire for those companies to make a difference. Yeah. And of course, some of those employers employ thousands of people, so that can be very impactful in itself to show that support to the communities within their workforce. But one thing that I think we've lost a bit of the sort of focus with Pride is, at least the bigger cities, they spend so much money on having big acts. Brighton with Mariah Carey, or
ridiculous.
Why? Do we need that?
It's a music festival. It's not Pride,
right? So,
and while I'm very, very keen on allies coming to perform for us, why are you paying £150,000 to who's the one in Manchester?
Nelly Furtado.
Come on. I just think if you are a true ally, come and perform for free. We'll have you.
Yeah.
But I think we should be focused on our own community on these days and not be turning it into a pink Glastonbury.
And I think probably that is the biggest, kind of conclusion that we can take in terms of way forward is probably trying to recenter, whether it's one or many prides, but recenter it on our community, on queer artists and queer voices from our community that would love to have that platform. And I know that many prides give them, but they always feel that they have to have a headliner. Yeah. No, you don't.
No. Absolutely
Keep it
not.
Focused on us. Don't spend thousands and thousands of pounds to pay the fees of these big names. Even if they waive their fee, they still ask you flights and hotels and things like. Just keep it focused on your community. Yes. And like you said, and we're coming at time already, but bring those different parts of the community together to discuss about Pride and the future of the movement.
And Trinidad and Tobago Pride, I'm watching you.
and many other prides globally. So this is a topic where we'd really love to hear your thoughts and your ideas on what pride should look for you and in the future. But once again, thank you for joining us for another episode, and we'll see you very soon with Fast Forward Pride podcast.
Bye.